Alright, it's time to add some new dies to my Dillon RL550B. I'm going to change from 9mm to 223. So I have all my components here. Got a new powder die. Got my caliber conversion kit, which includes a shell plate, powder funnel, and locator buttons. And then I've got my die kit here. Comes with the instructions here. Also comes with 3 dies. I've got my crimping die. I've got my bullet seating die, and you can see that it's marked on the top here, 223. And then I've got my decap die, or sizing die here. And it comes with an extra pin right here. So I'm going to go ahead and get started by removing my powder drop here. So I disconnect my rod and then loosen up my 2 Allen head screws here. And I just loosen these up. I don't take mine all the way out because there's a collar here. Once I get this loose, I loosen both these screws and then just slide the collar out and it lifts right off. Next, I'm going to remove my tool head, and I just removed the 2 pins here and slide the tool head out. Then I can raise my ram up, and you'll see a little set screw here. I need to loosen it up just a little bit. Don't need to take it out, and I can remove all of my keeper buttons here and loosen up the bolt here that's holding my index sprocket and shell plate in place, because I'm going to need to change my shell plate. So once I get that out, you just lift it straight up. Now you want to be careful because there is a detent ball and spring located right here. So I'm just going to get a magnet, and I'm going to go ahead and remove those because I want to, while I got this part, I want to go ahead and clean this area out. So what I do is take some air and blow the area out, anything that might have got down in there, and then I'll take a rag and wipe it off. Just since it's apart, I might as well. Makes for smoother operation when I put it back together. So now I can put my spring back in and my detent ball, and you can see it's spring loaded. That keeps the shell plate in place. So I can set my shell plate. This is my new shell plate, and then I have my index sprocket with the bolt, and I can push that all the way down, and I want to tighten it up fairly tight, and this is a personal preference to see how it feels, and you want to make sure that the 4 pins are lined up with the shell plate. There's 4 pins on the bottom of the index sprocket that need to be lined up with the shell plate so that it rotates with the indexing sprocket. So I've got it fairly tight, and I'm going to hold the screw. It's a little bit too tight. You can see it binds up, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten up my set screw just a little bit so that it puts a little pressure on the screw that holds the shell plate and index sprocket in place. And then you can see it's still too tight, so I'm going to back it off just a little bit. It's kind of a feel thing, how it feels. You just keep adjusting until you get it where you want to back it off a little bit more, and it's starting to spin pretty freely here. So I'm going to adjust it a little bit more. I like it a little tight, but I don't want it to be so hard that I'll break the indexing sprocket. Once I get it right where I want, I can lock it in a little bit, tighten it up a little bit more, and that feels pretty good there. It moves freely, locks in. So now that I've got it where I want it, I'm going to raise the ram again and tighten up my set screw all the way, and you can see it moves freely. So I've got a new tool head here, and this one I bought on Amazon, I believe, and it's marked with the station numbers here, so that'll make it easier. So I'm going to slide that in position here and put my 2 pins back in. So now I've got my tool head in, and I'm ready to start. I've marked my tool head with 223. That's what I'm going to go with. Start out with my station number 1. It's my decap die, and I'm going to screw that all the way in. Now once my die starts sticking through the bottom here, you can see it sticking out the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and pull my ram up, and what I'm looking for is a real tight tolerance. I want it to almost touch, so once my ram all the way up, I'm going to go ahead and pull the die down and turn it back a half a turn, and that should leave me the correct clearance. You'll see it's just barely not touching. Right in between, it's barely touching. So now that I've got it set where I want it, I can go ahead and put my locking nut and tighten it down. Drop it all the way down, make sure it's tight, and that's how station 1 is set up. You can see it barely touches when it goes up, and that should be just fine for sizing and decapping the first station. So now I've got my case, and I've got it all prepped. I want this to be a 1.750, and that's what this is. This is pre-prepped, and I had it ready. I need this for setting up station 2 and 3 just to make it accurate, and I use case lube. This is my homemade case lube here. And we're going to go to station 2, take my die and my powder die, put it in station 2, and I'm going to screw that down pretty far, and I got my powder funnel, and you can see that it's got an A on the neck of it. I want to make sure that that's facing straight up, and I just drop it right in. Now I need to get my powder drop, and I can go ahead and put that onto my powder die. Once I get that on there, I can put push the collar in and tighten the 2 screws. Doesn't have to be all the way tight. As long as the collar engages in that neck, it should be fine. And that allows you to spin it around. You can see it's locked in, so I'm good there. So now I'm going to take my case, put it in station number 2 in the shell plate, and you'll see the mechanism slides back and forth here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the ram down, and it doesn't move too much at all, if any. So that means I need to lower my die a little bit. So with the station 2 here, just tighten down the die, and you'll see that it's starting to move a little bit more. You want to make sure it moves enough to get all the powder, but not too much so that it crashes into the area here. And I'm still looking for it to go almost all the way. And I'll move it a little bit more and just keep adjusting it down. It's important to have the right size case here, or the case size that you're going to use for all of your loading, so that it's consistent. You can see that the powder bar is sliding more and more, so it's almost touching right there. So I'm going to go ahead and put my locking nut down. Pretty happy with the location on that, and I'll go ahead and tighten my locking nut for station number 2. And let's check it again. Looks like it goes all the way up, almost touches, doesn't quite touch, so that'll be a good setting right there. So now I'm going to go to station number 3 and put in my bullet seating die. You can see it's marked 223, and I want to back things off a little bit just to make sure that everything is out of the way, and I'll bring it down in a little bit. So I want to put my die in, and I'll usually run it down far enough so that I can actually feel it down at the bottom here. A little bit more than that is good, and then we can make minor adjustments from there. And right about there is good to start with. So I'm going to take my case, my pre-prepped case, and I've got the bullet that I'm going to be loading. Go ahead and set it in, and go ahead and bring it up. And I can see that the die did not really do anything there, so I'm going to bring it back up and tighten the die down. And I can use my adjustment screw here, and I'll bring it back down, and you can see it's still about the same. So I'll bring it back up, and I can adjust it starting out with a wrench, and you can actually feel some resistance once you hit the bullet and start pushing it into the case. So now I've got it started pushing into the case. I'm going to go ahead and take my measurement. I'm looking for 2.20 is what my book is calling for on this particular cartridge. So I need to go down a little bit more, and it's just an adjustment little by little. Now I can lock my die in and use my adjustment for the rest of it. So I'll just keep bringing it up, bring it down, and then I can use finer adjustments now until I get exactly where I want, and I can go ahead and take it out. And I am at 2.2001, so that's where I want to be. I can use my locking nut here, and I want to lock that in right where it is. So I'll hold the one and tighten the lock nut. Okay, now for station number 4, and you can see I have my crimping die here. It's marked 223, Dillon, all that good stuff. And I'm going to go ahead and screw that down till it's about flush with the bottom here. And I've got my cartridge. I'm going to go ahead and bring it up, and I'll bring my die down with the ram in the fully raised position. I'll bring the die down till I feel it hit the actual cartridge. Now that I felt it hit, I'm going to lower my ram, give it a few minor turns, nothing major, and I can take a look at it. It doesn't look like it did too much. There's still a lip on there. It didn't crimp much, so I'll go ahead and put it back in. Turn my die just a quarter turn. It's real fine adjustments on this. Doesn't take much once you've got it touching. You can see there's still just a little lip on there, so I'll lower it just a little bit more. I want to get it real smooth and not too tight though. And that looks pretty good. So next I'm going to tighten up my lock ring. And since I went from 9mm to 223, I'm going to have to change my powder bar. So I start out by taking out this little pin here. It just raises right up. Once I get that out, I push it forward a little bit, and I have a spacer bar here that comes out. And then I can remove, there's a little nut on one side, and I use my Allen head on here, and really all I have to do is loosen it one turn so that I can pull. This is spring loaded. You can see it moves the little nylon spacer out of the way, and then I can pull my powder bar out. That's my small one. Now I've got my large powder bar, and it goes right in. No spacer needed for this. Just slide it right in, and I want to make sure my nylon spacer locks into the little channel there. Once that's in, I can tighten my mechanism back up. Use a 3/8 inch wrench and the Allen wrench that came with my Dillon, and I can put my bar back on and snap it into place and make sure everything's operational. Alright, now that I've got my ram in the fully up position, I'm going to go ahead and lock my powder throw in and put powder in my powder measure here. Now I've got my empty case. I want to set my powder throw. So I'm looking for right around 25 grains. So what I do is just throw the powder, dump it out, check it, and then I'll go to the other side of the machine and rotate clockwise my powder adjustment nut, and then I'll throw it again until I get to my 25, I think is what the recipe for this powder is calling for. 25 grains should be good enough, and then I have to keep going back. And the closer I get, the less I'm going to turn my adjustment screw until I get to where I want to get. 25 grains again is what my powder recipe is calling for this particular cartridge. Okay, now that I am at 25 grains, all that's left to do is put the buttons back in, and that's all there is to changing the dies in a Dillon RL550B. I'm How To Bob. Thanks for watching.